This is the Environmental Protection Commission regular meeting, Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. It's at the Darien Town Hall, room 206, in Darien, Connecticut. Okay, new business. EPC 26-2022, 8 Rainbow Circle, MRIP. To install 120-gallon above-ground propane tank, copper line, and other related features within a special flood area and within close proximity to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies on the west side of Rainbow Circle, approximately 350 feet north of Tokenique Road, and is identified as map number 37, lot number 18C. The zone is an R1, and this is approximately 0.5923 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant has submitted their application. This is their first meeting. Again, to acknowledge receipt of this application, start the statutory time clock, and if there's any special provisions that, as a result of any inspections that you had done, we're initiating the process of the review. If you've been to the property, it's in the cul-de-sac of Rainbow Circle. It's a home that eventually will be undergoing renovation. They want to do a propane tank on a piece of the property. It has a reach of Tokenique Brook that goes through a piece of it. The floodplain extends over a pretty vast portion of it. And there are some wetland fringe on one side and a kind of a wooded wetland around the back and the side. And so it's because it's in the special flood hazard area and within the regulatory setback to the wetlands and water courses, is that it requires EPC approval. I don't know, any questions? I mean, we're just initiating the process.
Is it a safety hazard to put a propane tank in a flood area? I mean, I'm thinking of Ida, and when that came through with 6 and whatever inches in 15 minutes, or whatever the story was. I mean, that I'm sure flooded out.
So,
and then
you know,
you put a
part
propane
of,
tank there?
part of any proposal, where can you put this propane tank? I think that almost the entire property is in the floodplain. And then how do you construct it? So they have to elevate it on a platform more than a foot above the projected base flood elevation. They have to structurally certify the platform. They have to demonstrate the absence of impact on flood heights. And those are kind of things that we'll be asking for the applicant to provide. So you put a propane tank, you have a regulator, you elevate the regulator a foot above, and you make sure the base of the tank, the top of the platform, is more than a foot above as well. So if it's structurally, can withstand the flooding. So that will all be part of this.
Okay, because that would be my question. Does anybody else have a particular one? Michael?
Well, I know each case is weighed on its individual merits. I do know that this commission, prior to myself joining, there were applications that were denied where folks were looking to put mechanicals in the flood zone, in the wetland upland review area. And I would say this is certainly akin to those types of applications. If you're looking to put a 120-gallon propane bottle on the property, I guess the question would be is, why couldn't you put it in the garage? Why does it have to be outside in the wetland or in the flood zone?
I don't believe that you can place it inside of the building.
You can, if it's the smaller tanks, you can.
So there's, tank,
Big tanks, you can't.
There's a building code where you just have to put a ballard up so that you wouldn't crush it with a car. Well, you know what, and it's not my job to get into the building code aspect of it. I would just say I'd suggest the applicant look into prudent and feasible alternatives. That would be my comment.
So that's the first thing to do is look at it. There's an alternative outside the floodplain and outside the regulated areas that you replace it.
Yeah, and a map that maybe would be more legible.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah, I pulled out my magnifying.
Part of this too is, this is a homeowner has depending on a permitting service. The homeowner's getting more intimately involved in the application process. So there'll be clear plans, complete applications as we move. I have to go through it with.
Is this Galt? It's installing the tank, or is that
I think
that's
so.
There's one, I don't
That's,
recall.
yeah.
smoothly though.
Yeah.
Those are my only two comments. Prudent and feasible alternative and more thoughtful application documents.
Anybody else? Any other commission member would like this?
I will add that it's a great buffer between, right now, currently. So if they do a renovation on the house, hopefully they don't renovate on the property and start getting close to that wetland right now, because right now it's a great buffer to it all.
Well, that would be a separate application, I would assume.
Right, it's good for them to understand it.
Before they, okay.
Okay, that's all.
Anybody else?
I mean, just, on page 5, there was a schematic and with some numbers and labeling, but no, as far as I could see, there was no map to tell us what those mean, what they represent. Key,
Yeah,
thank
key.
you.
We'll make sure that
Yeah.
as we move down, we're gonna have full-scale maps, that's,
Yeah.
that's what they
really the
uploaded
complete
on
application,
the
yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So that, that'll be the requested information.
Anybody else? Okay. Moving on, EPC 27, 2022, 15 Holly Lane. N. Pedley and M. Pedley to install a generator and related features within close proximity to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the north side of Holly Lane, approximately 1,620 feet of east of Rowan Avenue, and is identified as map 9, lot number 145. The zone is an R1, and this is approximately 1.1218 acres. Rick?
Similarly, this is an application that has both wetlands and floodplain on it. There's a reach of Stony Brook that may be just off the property, the rear property boundary. Pretty extensive flood areas, wooded wetlands maintained as lawn. The applicant hopes to put in an emergency generator within close proximity to the dwelling. Again, the same issues as we discussed on the prior application with the legibility of the plans, a complete application. Again, the homeowner will be getting more involved, getting away from the permitting services and getting more involved in the completion of the application. And then really the same issues are applicable
Yep.
where they have to elevate it. And, again, there'll be some siting issues too, because you have to, relative to other features on the property. But elevating it, making sure that its design is being flood-proof, and because it makes no sense to have an emergency generator if it'll be inundated in the first couple minutes of a flood. So it'll be the same thing. Look at the alternatives,
Yep.
the area outside the floodplain, and then if not, where can we put it on a flood-proof platform that's going to provide them the service they need?
It's propane as well?
Yes, they have existing propane.
Now, I don't know if we're looking at wetlands when we go to these things, even though they're only looking at a generator. And I don't know if you went there today, but, they weed whacked everything right down to the stream. And it's like a crew cut there. And, it'd be a shame, I hate to see that, but they certainly could improve that area along there. I don't know what right we have when they're going for a generator to try to enforce some other issues, or at least to try to recommend some other issues. But that whole stretch is, as you say, it all flows right into that Stony Brook, right on down to the Sound. So
I think making our policy and practice has been to look for those opportunities, and
Yeah.
again, try to keep it in scale with what the application is, a generator versus a new house, or, a new.
no, there's
But
a point. to that.
absolutely can do that.
Yep.
And the only other item I saw is there's a bridge there and there's dumping on the other side of it, but because the map is tough to read, I don't even know if that's wetlands or not. But if you walk over that bridge, there's, everybody does that, they just dumped all their stuff there. If it's not the wetlands, no big deal, but if it is, that's something to look at. But I can't tell from this
Yeah.
diagram. That's it.
Quick question, Rick, is this, because we're using now the new electronic permitting system, is this just a print off the PDF that was submitted? So is the applicant printing this, or are you printing, is the town printing these?
I think there's issues with the permitting system and when people supply their applications and the completeness of application, because we are really charged with, if somebody submits an application, we have to take it, stick it on an agenda, and then solicit. So I think these were, I don't remember if we printed them or if they printed them and brought them in like that, but
Because where I was going is I've noticed
read
other municipalities that have now adopted, which I think is great because there's so much paper. They start using a screen and that's more work for you, but relevant for maps is if a full, let's say 2x3 map is submitted online, then the 2x3 map, either do we still want people, sorry, I'm not trying to get off topic, do we still want people printing and submitting 2x3 applications for review? Or do we want to look at them electronically ourselves at home and look at them on a screen here at commission? So coming back to the point of, I can't discern what the application is if this is what we're going to look at.
I can tell you that over the next couple of months, and I was gonna bring it up maybe at next month's meeting, is that we have received some number of iPads that each commission member is going to receive. And we're gonna be moving towards exclusively electronically. So you can get the applications, the plans, and everything else. So it'll come to us electronically, you'll get it electronically. It'll save me from having to drive to your house and shove things in your mailbox, and you can't open Lauren's mailbox and because it's a dumb mailbox. But I'd say over the next 2 months, they're doing things, they're introducing them to each of the land use. I think they may be doing, it's either ZBA or planning and zoning first, and then I think we were second on the list. So
Okay.
hopefully that'll go away, and then you just have to get used of carrying the iPad around and ensure if you need a paper copy of the plan, we'll print it out and we'll get it to you so you can scribble on it.
Right, but in this example, it was probably an 8.5 by 11 scanned PDF, judging by the way that this got scanned in. This was an original copy. So I just think,
Yeah, I can't make it
yeah,
up.
not to be a dead horse.
Is it like a database?
Well,
You
it
have
could be-
access through the iPad, you can't access it through a computer, your computer at home?
I don't know what the
Okay.
details are yet, but for years, I never delivered packages in my prior life. We just sent them electronically.
Oh, really? That's what they do with Sanford?
Yes, we just send them electronically and they would,
Why can't we just get an application on our,
I do like
an application like what I do with Lauren? So
I'll be one of those.
have an app,
holdouts for
you have passwords,
Yeah.
security, and,
So much easier for me.
I know a lot of financial institutions, you have the double password. They, you apply, they text you a number and you input it, which would provide, sufficient security, I would imagine. You probably.
Yeah, I don't know, Gary, I don't know if the database would support that. They'll have to, the IT people.
Yeah. I think that's a layer on top of the application, but yeah, but just.
what we're doing is
have another computer
experimenting
hanging
with
around.
another land use commission, so
Yeah.
we'll
All
learn
right.
from there.
Okay, anybody else on 15 Holly?
No.
No? Okay, moving on, EPC 28-2022, 2 Tanglewood Trail, C, KES model, to install a fence within close proximity to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the south side of Tanglewood Trail, just west of Roqueton Road, and is identified as map 18, lot number 29. The zone is an R1, and this is approximately 0.601 acres.
Mr. Chairman, again, like the last 2 applications, this is to acknowledge receipt of the application, to start the statutory time clock, and to acknowledge any, preliminary comments you may have if you've been out to the site. Application is to construct a fence. My understanding to be a combination of more decorative fence along the dwelling and more of a deer fence kind of thing along the wetland corridor, paralleling the wetland corridor, not encroaching beyond the existing limit of lawn and landscape, and staying out of the more naturally well-vegetated, wooded wetland space that adjoins the Cummings Brook as it goes through this property. So, any questions or comments that people have, the members have? And Mr. Liebman is here tonight in case there are any questions for you.
Bill?
It's a matter of, if they're gonna put a pool and a patio here, it's already listed in one of the things. Why do we do this twice? Why shouldn't it be one pool patio fence so that we don't have to go out there twice, we don't have to look at it twice? I mean, it's already listed in here, you know, that's what they want. And it just seems to me not efficient for our time or anybody else's time, and why can't it all be one application?
Well, if it were, it'd have to be very explicit about the pool and the patio, and that would be the central thing that we would be looking at in terms
Right.
of water quality impact, et cetera.
Yep.
The proposal was for the fence, my understanding was,
What's in here, pool and patio?
Yeah, it does say pool, and there's a picture of where it's proposed.
Yeah.
I was confused.
no, I am
You know, this
confused
is,
too.
Here,
this is right down
Because
the
there's
pipe.
there's no pool there.
Yeah, where does it say proposed pool?
right here.
Is it on the map?
No,
Yeah.
No, it's
on the
picture.
plan.
Oh, on the
Picture.
pictures, yeah.
Right.
But it's also in this. So,
Yeah, and it's-
now, I just want to
Yeah.
be efficient here, and you'll be in the next one we do, it's the same issue. They got a pool, but they don't have them put in their fence, and we know yet.
Well, there's some qualification to that when we get there.
All right, so I'd like to figure out how we could do this more efficiently.
Well, again, my understanding was, and I spoke to the owner, it was essentially gonna be a dog fence at this point to maintain the dog. And I know I've had conversations with Mr. Lehman saying, do we, maybe wanna include a pool. Really, the fence should be, if that's the case, then it should be a pool and patio and reflected as such. But I did not see a
Well,
pool on this
I
plan.
just hope we don't in 2 months say, oh, and now we're going for the pool and patio.
Right.
You know, come on, let's do this right. Okay. That's
So,
Is
I'm a
it a
little slow.
timing thing?
is there a pool? So there's no pool proposed here, even though the application, even though,
I did not see a pool in the application plans. I know it's maybe in the application, but not on the application plans.
highlights.
and look at part 2,
Is
question
the
8.
application's representative here?
It says to Tungo Trail, okay, et cetera. Pool and terrace that has more than 1,000 square feet of net impervious surface. So I'm confused. Should we get them up here till, excuse me,
Larry?
you want to come up? Yes, thanks.
No. Right.
Yeah, can you stand by the microphone, sir? Please identify yourself and,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Larry Lieben from SE Minor. I'm the senior environmental analyst with SE Minor. The application is for a pool fence. And yes, there will be a pool application in the future, except what the applicant is new homeowners moved in, and they have a pet that they would like to be able to keep on their property. And so what we decided when we talked about this, instead of putting multiple fences up and do things, just to put up the pool fence, which would be the closest activity to the resource. And then the pool and the patio will come afterwards with all of the drainage. So that's what is proposed. The closest activity that we're doing is the corner of the pool at 10 feet. The corner of the corner of the fence, excuse me, at 10 feet from the resource. It is all in the fence where we located the fence. There is no tree removal. There's no shrub removal, and everything is going to, as a matter of fact, there will be some lawn area that will be allowed to revert back to natural state by the location of the fence, which will then reduce the mowing, et cetera, so on and so forth.
So the assumption is that this commission will approve the pool and patio.
no,
No.
no.
Just the fence.
He
Just the
no,
fence.
but he's assuming this fence is going to be encompassing where the pool and patio are going to be.
He can assume anything he wants.
Okay.
Okay, but as far as I'm concerned,
Okay.
this does not include a pool, and so therefore, there's no drainage involved here. He's he's putting, I guess, a reasonably high-quality pool fence around his property. And we define it as a pool fence, I define it as a fence.
Okay.
Okay, and that, the second application, I agree with you, I would prefer to see everything together at once. Because we've seen a number of applications where, hey, let's put in the pool, oh, let's put in the terrace as a second time. And you sit there and you go, you know, it's just not efficient because I call it incrementalism. Well, I got away with the pool. No, you know, and if we had seen the two applications together, I would agree with what, you know, Michael's point to saying, hey, well, you know, maybe it would change our way of looking at the alternatives and things like that. So the commission, you know, I think the application is written incorrectly because it says pool, okay? And so I would make a very specific recommendation on our approval, basically stating that this does not imply approval for any pool, et cetera, et cetera.
And if I may interject, the applicant is well aware of that. The applicant, we
No,
have
I
told the
understand.
applicant, tried to get the applicant to say, let's get the pool design and let me come in one time, so this way then you can see everything. But they're really, really concerned about their pet, so that's why we're here.
Okay.
That's why we're doing it.
I understand that. There's an old Roman expression. I know, verbum volante, scriptum remanente. What is said flies. What is written remains. Okay? The application is a written document. Okay? It is what is legally on file. If, you know, someone were to review this, it says pool. Okay? So in order to counteract that, I would say, and as a matter of fact, I'll insist, that this commission is not passing judgment on anything to do with pools or drainage or anything else. This is just a fence.
That's
Okay.
what we're asking for.
And he has to correct that.
Has to amend the application.
He has to amend the application, that's all.
Okay.
Okay, so,
right.
but that was a good catch. So, we okay now?
Yep.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, good catch, guys. I mean, thank you, Carolyn and Bill. Okay, moving on to, we're finished, thank you very much.
Thank
Old business, EPC 1522, 35 Old Parish Road, J. Morgan. To construct an in-ground pool, pool equipment, fence, drainage, and related improvements in a special flood hazard area and proximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the east side of Old Parish Road, approximately 400 feet north of West Avenue, and is identified as map number 19, lot number 46. The zone is R1, and this is approximately 1.03 acres. Rick?
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is proposing to install a pool along the north side of the existing dwelling, and if you've been there, it's significantly occupied by lawn grass. The wetland is simply along a reach of a brook that's just off-site to the north.
Yep.
It's a fringe wetland, then it expands to a more wooded space at the rear or to the eastern portions of the property. The eastern portions of the property are significantly, heavily vegetated with both the woodland and ornamental plantings. The area of the pool significantly is maintained as lawn grass. If you notice in the agenda summary report, I mentioned that the development of the parcel had been, subject to prior municipal approval, and under that, there was a infiltration system that had been proposed for the site, or had been implemented on the site. And part of the challenge of this review was to identify the limits of that existing infiltration system, because there wasn't an as-built plan prepared. So a lot of the time had been spent trying to identify where the limits of that was. So we talked about where the wetlands are. The applicant is challenged with, and again, substantially, or about half of the property is within the floodplain. The applicant is challenged with demonstrating that is minimized or avoided the wetland resource impacts. They utilize measures to preserve and enhance water quality. They addressed potential drainage issues and hydraulic impact issues, flood-proof design of structures that are actually lying within the base flood area, and supply measures to mitigate for unavoidable impacts and improve the overall conservation values of the regulated areas and property. It had been before initially, the commission before, and some recommendations for further information on how we're gonna maintain water quality during the construction, filling in voids along the edge of the watercourse with landscaping, and other things that were, brought to our attention, as well as my comments earlier in the summer. In response, the applicant has provided a revised site development plan, and they've identified where those existing features are. Portions of the existing drainage system have to be relocated. I mean, essentially, the pipes associated with it wasn't as big of an encroaching that I hoped it would not be. There are no direct wetlands or watercourse encroachments. It affects about 130 square feet of the upland review area, with essentially grading, and about 4,200 square feet with grading and drainage. Is within the special flood hazard area. Grade change is relatively low. There's not a substantial amount of tree loss associated with it, mostly with a hedge and some ornamentals in the front portion of the property. And the encroachments lay about between 45 and 54 feet to the wetlands and watercourses at its closest point. And it has to do with structures and grading. They did a drainage analysis to essentially evaluate the impacts of the development proposal. Existing is generally midpoint to Old Parish Road, midpoint to the east. And he intends, because there's going to be an increase in overall imperviousness on site, they will be proposing a structured drainage system, create 3 post-construction watersheds, and will take essentially the imperviousness associated with the pool and put it into an infiltration system. They have been able to certify that for 2 to 50-year storms, there'll be no adverse impact in the peak rate of runoff from this property. In terms of the encroachments into the special flood hazard area and the hydraulic impacts, de minimis amounts of fill. The engineer has certified that there'll be no rise in flood heights as a result of the encroachments. It lays significantly out of the regulatory floodway. The pool has been designed, there's been a pool plan provided, and it's been certified as being capable of withstanding the flood forces that would be associated with this project. Other elements have yet to be designed, such as the equipment pad and some of the underground utilities linking the pool to the filtration system. And that could be certainly done in advance of a building permit. Water quality. During the construction, they propose things such as perimeter silt fences, a dirt bag in the event they have to dewater the sump. Other things that are incorporated into it include yard drains with deep sumps and outlet controls. They're utilizing infiltration to seize on the soil's ability to naturally filter and cool runoff, and a planting plan for the open space along the brook has been supplied, and it includes 10 conservation valued plants in that particular area. The rest of it does have some planting around it already. That is my brief presentation on the application. I am available to answer any questions. I don't think anybody's here as of yet that could represent the application.
Is there a fence around this pool?
Okay, so that was one of the alternatives. So the building code, believe it or not, has changed effective October 1st.
First, yep.
Is that you no longer have to have a pool fence, provided
Yes,
provided
listen to this.
you have a cover that meet certain criteria for protections. So, in this particular instance,
Okay.
because one of the questions was, what's the alternative here? We don't want the pool fence essentially segmenting the regulated areas. And then we started getting into the design of the fence and keeping it up to address your concerns about drainage and little critters running back and forth. And so the applicant has chose the alternative in this particular instance to have, to place the money into the code compliant cover as opposed to the fence itself.
Okay.
So that was actually really the main alternative. And the other thing is, they kept the grades relatively close to what's there now, so there'd be basically about a foot of grade change or so, a little bit more in some places. And so they've kept it back, they've kept the pool tight to the building. And again, they've, offered these mitigations that the board may find to be appropriate, given the scope and scale of the work they're proposing.
This was a change at the state level.
Yes.
Wow.
The state, oh, really?
I guess we adopted the state code
On the pools?
on pools.
This is interesting.
You have to comply with
And then we
With the
could
state
be more
building
strict
code.
that way.
Alright.
I'm guessing so.
So is it, they have to cover it every day, every time?
Yes.
they-
It's an automatic
It's
retractable.
Oh, it's an
electronic.
automatic, okay,
So a child can't fall in the pool. It covers
Uh-huh.
100% of the surface of the pool.
got it,
It's pretty sophisticated.
interesting.
And you can cover, you have an app to cover it. I was at a neighbor's pool, and it was like, where's your fence? And a guy goes, what date you have? So whatever it was, and I was like, it's after October 1st. As of October 1st, the law changed.
Yeah.
And he goes, watch this. And when he-
Do they have to tie those into emergency generators? Because if you lose power and that doesn't open, it doesn't shut?
Don't know.
I imagine so.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay. Answers my
But it
question.
is,
Thank you.
Peter's question, that was the question I had.
Yeah.
It is a state ordinance that
No, state ordinance, it's the building code.
It's
State building
international,
code.
it's now the International Building Code, which the state of Connecticut adopts.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Good answer. That took care of that
well,
one.
good answer. Anything else, Bill?
No.
Anybody else, any other commissioners have a question, please?
I do. As I understand from the owner, there are currently an infiltration system that's up close to the house, but it's being relocated. I don't know what direction that is, but it's being relocated up here, next to the pool.
Well, it's not, they spent a lot, as I said, they spent a lot of time in technology identifying where the limits were. And so they don't have to move the infiltration system, they have to move, I think, a propane tank.
Right,
They
but
have to
yes, they do.
relocate the piping that was the overflow from the infiltration system. So if you look on the plans, there's, it's very light where the existing system is, but then there's relocate piping
Yes, okay.
to get it around the pool.
So maybe I misunderstood what the homeowner told me or showed me, but there were some flags indicating where the Coltex currently are, and they were not in this location. They were up close to the house.
They were up in here.
So,
Yeah, they're gonna be
Okay.
moved.
so they're staying put, they're just the.
The
pipe-
Coltex are staying put. The
Okay.
pipe, the overflow piping is being relocated.
Okay. Okay, and because the Coltex will be because the pool will, it also has the drain that's going into the Coltex, will there be any additional Coltex added?
Yes. So you see right above it? So you have the pool, and then in the upper left-hand corner, you see there's a junction box or a yard drain that's essentially a junction box. And above it, you see 12 additional infiltration units that are being proposed to attenuate the impacts of the pool and the patio and like this other impervious surface with the equipment pad, et cetera.
Okay. So that was one question. And then the other question I have, and just bear with me because I don't really quite understand this, but if you look at the topographic and zoning location survey, and you look at where the 1% chance flood hazard line elevation is, does that go up? I'm trying to compare it to this map. Does it?
So the way that you should do these, and I don't know if it's reflected on both on topography, is for riverine systems. And you look at the flood insurance study, it gives you an elevation. Essentially, the flood insurance rate map holds the graphic representation on the flood insurance rate map. But you should also show it in riverine situations by elevation. So you see on the civil drawing, they located both. And there's a slight difference. There's a slight difference. Now, in this case, it doesn't make really a substantial difference in how we have to flood-proof the pool and all these other things. But often there'll be a pretty large mapping error, and there's process associated with it. So the map holds. So if the flood zone is in this direction here, you did it and if you showed it by elevation, now you're doing something in between. You have to comply with the flood regulations if the elevation is greater than what the map shows. If it's conversely, if the elevation shows it being less substantial, there's process to it. Is that you can go to FEMA and request a letter of map revision and take that portion of the property out. So the reason why that you have two on here is one's done by graphic representation, the other's done by elevation.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Anybody else?
I had a question and a comment. So I heard you say that there's not a substantial amount of tree loss. Are there any quality trees being lost? I know there's some really nice.
There's a hedge that'll be
Trees.
partially, I believe partially that's going to be removed, in some ornamentals.
I think okay, so nothing, like none of the large trees.
No, nothing in
over
the
on
backyard
this
at all.
side
Nothing's being touched at all.
Okay, okay,
And I think that's why they kind of shifted it up in here, because it's bare lawn.
yeah. And then there's plantings along the bank of the water as well?
There's some that's existing, all in through here. So here's a stream, it's just off-site, and it kind of flows back in here and eventually becomes tributary to Stony Brook further to the east. But this is already highly landscaped and also native woodland. There was a void
Yes.
in
that's
this
what-
area in
yes,
here.
Yes,
And this is where they're proposing
Those are
some
the proposed, okay.
environmental features.
okay, and then I did also talk to the homeowner, and I do know that they did spend a lot on planting trees since they've been there over the past few years, so I think we should give them a little credit as well for what they've already done, so I think it looks good.
And again, I think that's reasonable for what
Yeah.
we're trying to achieve.
That was the area I was looking at. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on old business.
So the recommendation
Yes.
is we'll do a resolution in advance of
Yes,
the next meeting.
please.
Sorry, I just had one more question. I'm sorry,
Sure,
I forgot
please.
that it occurred to me. Do we require no pesticide use on the lawns as we go through ones like this specifically?
You know, here, we do not. Yeah, I mean, I think when you do your conditions, you have to make conditions that are enforceable. Is the pesticide police going to be out there seeing if they're applying pesticides to their lawn? I think that's probably not an enforceable condition, personally.
Does it make sense to recommend it on some of these? Or, I mean, especially when I go out there and see clear indications that pesticides were used, signs and things like, it's.
I guess we could recommend it, but it's a recommendation as opposed to,
A requirement.
a requirement. That says, if we go out there and say, hey, no, you can't take this tree down, you have to do this or something like that, that's a requirement. And we can enforce that, okay? Pesticides, that's a pretty difficult one. I don't know how you enforce that. So,
I think what we traditionally do, to what Bill Wright was saying earlier, is restoration of the wetland and establishing a buffer.
Buffer, yeah.
So someone's not weed whacking golf turf to the creek bed. That area has to be put back to its natural status and have some type of buffer that the landscaper isn't dropping 1,000 pounds of nitrogen once a month during the growing season. That sort of stuff.
mhm.
I
So-
don't
so
know
it
whether
should-
it's,
so-
in this application, I don't know whether it's relevant to say we want you to restore a resource and curl back around trees, or it's like an ad hoc.
It's more of a general, you see grass treated with pesticides going right up to water.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
the idea, what I'm hearing is that we can, instead of saying no pesticides, say the buffer
The
plantings.
buffer,
Yes.
that's
in
the
place.
Bill Wright resolution to that
Yeah,
situation.
Bill Wright resolution.
Clever. Someday,
Thank
we
you.
might be able to, get more of control on fertilizers and pesticides, and some towns have done that. I'm not sure in this state, but in this town, it's gonna be a tough battle.
Well, I
Yeah.
think anecdotally, just from my experience professionally, is a lot of landscapers are starting to use organic products because Aquarian is policing the usage of water, and customers don't want their lawns completely burned out. So if you're using the good stuff, you need to be watering your property like a golf course. And the economics shake out on that, and the lack of resource, the policing of the water, and there's becoming a balance with that, I think.
And we,
But-
Eversource clearly for a couple of years now has had a, twice-a-week program.
Yeah, the schedule.
And literally, I mean, I think they got to it once, as I recall. They turned off the water.
Yeah.
And
It can get
obviously
to
turned
it,
it back on, okay, but it was there's 2 letters of warning, then they go out and meet with the person, and then the fourth is that. But that only applies, except in the town of Greenwich, okay, to where they have, where you use Aquarian water to water. Okay, if you don't have Aquarian water in the town of Darien, you can do whatever you want, and they can come and, et cetera, and explain to you why you don't want to do it. But from a legal perspective, they can't do anything. So that's so like in New Canaan, for example, where half the town is well water. Aquarian can suggest, et cetera, and use powers of persuasion, but from a legal recourse, they have none. So,
I'll leave you with this is tangential, but in California, they just instituted this policy statewide. If you're on a municipal water supply, the utility will come out and will dig up your pipe and will put a valve on it where you could only run your kitchen sink and maybe your washing machine simultaneously. It's like putting a boot on your car. And it's not, yeah. So that's, I think it's a good thing. I mean, we're an environmental commission, and that's certainly the trend where this country's going.
well, actually, we're the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Commission.
Yes, excuse me. Okay, thank you, sir.
So, okay. Anyway, anybody else on this application? Carolyn? You're smiling?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I should bring this up or not, but I'm just thinking of, so now that pools aren't required to have fences if they're built after a certain date, and what I was kind of getting at, and like, again, bear with me, but if the, I'm thinking about the most recent or last week Board of Selectmen meeting where there was a presentation by several people talking about like what the town is doing to mitigate flooding. And Ed Gentile got up and, he's the director of Public Works, and he said that, one of the issues that they have, when we have these big flooding events like Elsa, is that, they're pulling all kinds of things out of storm drains or that are blocking storm drains and exacerbating flooding issues like lawn furniture and play equipment and gardening tools and, things that you typically will find in someone's backyard. So if someone has a pool that's not that far from a water course and there's now no longer a fence to kind of, if we have a storm like some of these storms, what's going to keep, like the patio equipment and everything, stationary? Like, are we going to have to, suggest that they move everything inside if there's a big storm event? I mean, since there is no longer a fence to kind of corral that stuff. And this was something that he was very adamant that the public should know about, because it creates huge problems for flooding.
Well, that applies to, I mean,
To a lot
I
of
mean, I've seen porta potties float down.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and
No,
stuff, and
it's
stuff like that, so it's
everything.
just
Yeah.
not, I think we're over criticizing pools. I who do not have a pool, but I have lawn furniture.
Yeah.
That'll sit around on my deck and, fortunately I sit on top of it, so I don't have to worry about flooding. But it's still, it applies to every piece of property
Yeah,
in Darien.
absolutely,
As
yeah.
opposed to just those guys who have, pool furniture.
Right, no, I wasn't
So
suggesting that it did.
Pool furniture on the outside. No, there's a whole lot of stuff that, I mean, when, during, I think it was either Else or Ida, I forget, when the Goodwives River shopping
September,
plaza
right.
flooded. All the stuff that was found downstream from
Yeah,
that.
no, he said there was a couch. I mean, there's everything.
Yep, no,
But, so, okay, so we.
so, I mean, there's, I've seen play sets,
Yeah.
I've seen them all, go down, and that's just, a little stream and a half.
But homeowners are gonna take ownership of this.
Yes.
There's a big storm coming. I'm not in the flood zone. I pull my, patio equipment and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
close to the house and the grill, and I'm taking my
Yeah,
trash
Right.
cans and all those kinds of things. There's
Yep.
a certain amount that's just,
it's a personal,
Straight
element of
common
personal
sense.
responsibility here.
Yeah,
And-
no,
And
there
so,
definitely
we all
is.
agree with what
That was
Ed's
sort of his
observations.
plea to the public,
But,
so.
but there's, unless somebody is, in flagrante, to where they're in the floodplain and they have loose stuff like this, and you catch them and you say, hey, you can't do that.
Well, that's why I was trying to.
but there's so much more to it than that, the big picture, what are the big issues? The big issues are development,
Mhm.
controlling stormwater, the status of infrastructure. There's so many things that have to do with flooding being, reasonable in development proposals that don't have 25,000 square feet
Mm.
of imperviousness, doing things such as, permeable pavers and all these other kind of
Right.
things that you can do. So that's, I think he's mentioning is some of the things that most people can do. Be
Yes,
reasonable, taking your furniture.
yes, exactly.
Don't
Right.
leave your snow shovels out in the brook or your wood stockpile next to the brook. That's
Yep.
all, and that's, quite honestly, part of what we're doing when everybody says, pick up the debris and don't leave around the
Mhm.
streams, and we try to clean those out. We'll have a simple agent approval later on where clean out that section of this channel on a regular basis when you see it gets clogged.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they said, okay, and they went out and they did, quite honestly, so being a responsible homeowner is part of it too. But there's bigger fish to fry.
Oh, I know. Yeah, no, and he does as well.
Well,
That's all I have.
Carol,
Yeah.
anybody else?
Nope.
Nope, okay. Moving on, EP 16, 2022. 20 St. Nicholas Road, D. King and L. King, construction of an in-ground pool equipment fence, and other related features proximate to the wetlands and water courses. The property lies along the south side of St. Nicholas Road, approximately 325 feet west of Mansfield Avenue, and is identified as map number 6, lot number 81, the zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.331 acres.
Mr. Chairman, in the months of July and September, the commission heard the detailed presentation by staff and the applicant concerning this application, and as a result, being satisfied that the issues that were raised at the time were satisfactorily addressed, you directed staff to prepare a resolution for your consideration at this month's meeting.
Okay, do staff members have that?
Yes.
Okay, I know you submitted your comments. I'm glad to see you back online.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Great. Peter, may I have a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve EPC 16-2022, 20 St. Nicholas Avenue.
Jim, second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Okay, next item of business is EPC 17-2022, 35 Hamilton Lane, D. Morgan and E. Morgan, to construct an expanded pool patio, underground propane tank drainage, and other related features proximate to the wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the north side of Hamilton Lane, approximately 130 feet west of Ironwood Lane, and is identified as map number 10, lot number 34. The zone is R1, and it is approximately 1.0087 acres.
Chairman, the applicant is proposing, as you said, to expand the pool patio underground propane tank, construct an expanded drainage system and other features on this property. As you may recall, and if you've been to the property, along the left-hand side of the property is a small watercourse with a fringe wetland with a range of scrub to woodland. The wetland expands up onto the property and is lawn grass in the center reaches of the property, and it is wooded wetland space to the east. The house exists with all its tenant facilities. As you'll note in the agenda summary report, the commission approved an application several years ago to put an addition on the property that was on the rear plane of the project, and it included a very de minimis drainage system to attenuate the impacts solely associated with that addition. The applicant had started to expand the patio on the property and had requested to do the other elements as well, and of course they were advised to prepare an application. They stopped, the base is essentially fully in on the patio. They haven't, last time I was there, they haven't provided the surface treatments on it. And we developed a list of information we thought was necessary to move the application forward. And it included looking at, given the increase in imperviousness, looking at things such as drainage. Their charge is to provide drainage water quality and to appropriately mitigate for either to mitigate impacts or to improve the overall conservation values of the property. And so the commission offered their initial commentary at that first meeting. So they provided a site development plan. There are no direct watercourse or special flood hazard encroachments proposed. There is a de minimis estimated 16 square foot encroachment in the wetland within the existing pool fence that's there, and about 1,100 square feet of the upland review area is either temporarily or permanently impacted. Wetland encroachments, again, within the fence line, the overall grade change is low. There's no large individual or groups of trees that are going to be impacted as a result of the development. And where the expanded patio was occupied previously by either lawn, landscaped, or prior patio surfaces. They looked at drainage, and as a result of the increase in overall development, the anticipated increase there would be in peak flows, they expanded the system to 8 Coltech units. They did test hole data to show that it was going to be feasible.
Because that's very flat there, that's
It's
awfully
extremely
wet.
flat,
That's-
and it's very flat, but they found that
They
it
found
was,
some area to do that?
they found an acceptable space to do that, and there's a certification in there that for the 2 to 50-year storms, as typical, there's no increase in peak flows. One thing I should, there will be a need to modification in the drainage system that the DPW is looking for a coarse particle separator that has to be added to this. Water quality, we have an erosion control plan. Again, these junction boxes, we'll have to confirm they have a deep sump and bell trap in it to collect sediment before discharge into the system. They're using infiltration, again, seasoned upon the ability of the soils to cool and filter runoff. They are making a conversion from fuel oil to propane with a new underground fuel storage tank located outside of the wetlands and outside of the special flood hazard areas. But they'll be removing the existing fuel oil, which is a positive from a water quality perspective. They have developed a plan of mitigation, and a lot of this was pointed out by commission members. To the left, cleaning out debris from the channel. There's rocks and debris and remnant construction materials and fence, or at least there was fence segments, et cetera. They're doing some invasive control, and this was prepared by Alexandra Mock. And they're doing planting along the edge to stabilize the embankment. They're also pulling what will be non-functional existing drainage discharges from roof drains from there as well, and restoring the bank. And along the right side, which is the area closest to where the pool patio expansion is they will be removing an existing propane tank, remnant fences, accumulated wood debris, accumulated storage and stockpiles of wood. There's groups of remnant construction debris, household things that are over there, and then doing a pretty extensive planting plan for that portion of the property as well. And again, by hand, mechanically removing invasives to give the plantings a head start. Mr. Doherty is here, in case there's any questions.
Would you mind coming up?
And I'm available to answer any questions.
Hi, for the record, my name is Matthew Doherty. I'm an architect for the Morgans, and I'm here to represent the application.
Great. Rick, you have a pretty complete analysis. Is there anybody here who would like to ask questions of the applicant? Applicant's representative?
Go first.
I just, when I was out there today, I was speaking with the homeowner, and it didn't seem to me that he was aware of some of the boulders and the plantings and things like that, just through our discussion. Is the homeowner aware of all the updates and changes that have been made to the plans yet?
So the plan for the mitigation here with the landscaping was given to the homeowner. We had presented a previous mitigation plan from a different landscape designer. We tried to contact him for 2 months to then, give us some information that was requested last time to come along the stream. Without success, we had to bring somebody in, and just recently, this was sent to us last week, where we were able to then bring it into the commission. So all of this is basically the things that we had discussed previously. All the things that were added and included on this plan were part of recommendations from the commission. So we were trying to address this in the best way possible. So.
And is the homeowner agreeable to all of that as well, or?
Well, as far as I understand.
Okay.
I mean, this is basically what we need
Well,
to
this
do.
is a condition of improvement.
This
This is a
what-
condition of approval.
Yeah.
That when the applicant receives a letter from us. It will say, it's been represented to us, this is gonna happen. Okay, you're legally committed to do that.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
no,
I-
okay, you're
I
legally
understand.
committed to do that, because if you don't, we can go out and require, a deposit from the homeowner that says, that says, a bond that says, hey, you're gonna do this, or we're gonna, use your bond, or we'll only release the bond once, staff goes out there to take a look at the property. So, what I don't get a warm and fuzzy feeling here, that the homeowner is engaged, okay? And so, Rick, how should we handle this?
Well,
Yeah, because it's very clearly, part and parcel, when we give an approval, we rely on the representations of the applicant, okay, to do stuff, and so,
Well, we wouldn't prepare a plan if we weren't prepared to execute on it. I'm not,
well, no, I understand you, okay? No, I understand you because you've done a lot of work here, okay? What I'm concerned is the homeowner, does he know what he signed up for? Okay, so, is he, you've gone to him and go, hey, this is gonna cost you X, okay, to do. This is what it's gonna look like, and we wanna make sure that, and the applicant has said, yes, and, you shook hands on it, or signed a contract, or whatever you
yeah,
do.
so I do have a contract to do this work with the homeowner.
Oh, okay.
So
I guess it's good enough.
and if it's
I mean-
helpful, I spent a lot of time going through everything with him and
Yeah.
explaining what a stormwater plan is and, what this planting plan means
Oh.
and what he would have to do and involved in that. We gave feedback and I went through
Wow.
in detail about the whole thing.
Well, because,
So,
but what's funny is, in my
Maybe more.
non-legal, I'll leave Peter out of this, 'cause in my non-legal opinion, maybe he signed a contract he didn't understand, okay?
I don't think he read it, right.
But on the other hand, he has to write a check,
Yeah.
okay? And has to write a substantial check for this, because that has gotta happen, okay? So, I'm confused because this is professional output. They have to go and explain to the homeowner, and if the homeowner goes to you and goes, well, that's kind of interesting, I didn't know that. Oh,
But don't forget, he's an authorized agent.
yep,
The homeowner signed on to that. He's making decisions on behalf. Of course, he should be coordinated with the homeowner as well. And it's going to be a condition of approval. And, what happens? No one gets, the ultimate leverage is, no one gets a sign-off for a CO on these elements until they're fully implemented to the
Yeah.
satisfaction of staff. There's gonna be certifications involved. So,
I guess that's your ultimate,
you know,
that's your
Right.
ultimate playing card.
Right, and just to, continue on the same topic, right? The homeowner brought in their own landscape person who was not able to complete this task. So they asked me to bring in my team people to then finish this so that we can progress
Okay.
with the couple
Maybe
items
that-
that
Explain
are
that
left
big
here,
picture.
right? So, there may have been another person who spent a lot of time, but they basically stepped off the job, and,
Okay.
I'm left in a position where, hey, it's time for heat, and I don't have a propane tank. So that's where
Yeah.
I'm, we know what we need to do, but we're prepared to execute on it.
No.
Could I add one little section? I haven't been there since last month, but the problem along the driveway was they had a silt fence that was about 6 inches off the ground, and everything was just going right underneath it. So I don't know, maybe they fixed that. but
They
I-
didn't, but there's no work being done over
Okay.
there.
Right.
So may we enforce or request that they put a silt fence there with hay bale backing on the interior side, so that we make sure that we get some serious control there, because it looks like all that, they're gonna do some more digging for some of the cultics, so they're gonna need to go right by that section. So if they could make that a stipulation, to get that really secure, that'd be helpful.
Okay.
Who's the builder?
So the builder is Dogman Construction.
Right here.
You okay?
Yeah, no, I just,
No, did you ask for the construction?
No, he answered.
Was there a
No.
follow-up?
no, there's no follow-up, I was just curious. Are the silt fences, if the silt fences are down, are they down, or they just look like they're old?
There's space underneath of them,
Big
they're
space
up.
underneath it. So they didn't
Well-
bury the silt fence
They
into
didn't
the
even come
ground?
close to getting to the ground.
So, okay, well, maybe the applicant could address that. And
Well, I think the silt fencing's been sitting out there for a long time. There's been no work there. Nobody's been doing anything there since they came off the job.
I haven't been to the site.
Yeah.
Is the site,
So if-
Rick, is the site,
if nobody's working, there's not gonna be anybody to
is the
maintain
site
a silt
have
fence.
turf, or is it all runoff going underneath the silt fence, is my question. So it's germane
Right,
whether.
no, I
it's-
mean, there's
Hold on.
areas,
It's
there's areas.
germane if there's, I'm just poking my head up because I heard something. It's germane if there's no construction, but if it's all mud and muck and it rains, then there's gonna be sheet flow and all the silt is gonna go right underneath the
Of
fence.
course, I mean, the bottom line is, put your silt fence back up. You know, that's.
So
And
get
when
a
they
guy.
We've been a couple times out there and sent them letters, put your silt fence back up.
So let's get a guy out there with a mini and bury the silt fence the way it should be done. That's it. Let's keep it simple.
And I say overall, it's relatively long. Of course, there's more sparse areas that are, that are not, fully stabilized yet.
Is it running off into the wetland?
I mean, I would say that it's not a substantial contribution
Okay.
of sands and silt and
I'll
debris.
leave it to staff.
Yes.
Mr. Doherty, I'm noticing on your site plan, your architectural site plan, that you reference in here the soil scientist report in terms of delineation of wetlands. But then when I look at the soil scientist report, I see not much detail on this, and it's over 22 years old. So can you comment on whether the survey from 1999 is still applicable today, and what kind of detail did you get to delineate your architecture?
So to answer the first question in regards to the wetlands condition, from my understanding is that when the original addition was made, all that lawn was there. So, and there's been no real change to that whatsoever. The pool was part of a previous addition that neither I nor the current homeowner was a part of. So in terms of the water course changing, where it's been lawn and is basically gonna stay lawn, there wouldn't be any reason for that soil to change composition.
But I'm not seeing very much detail in that 1999 plan. I'm really seeing a very rough sketch.
But that's typical of a soil scientist sketch, and that would be consistent with what I would receive from the exact same soil scientist today.
But he put flags out and the flags were surveyed. So it is a surveyed location of the flags. And I would say that
I guess I'm going to whether a survey from over 22 years ago is still applicable today. I mean,
Depends. I mean,
know
when
the
they have
course
it-
may not have changed, but the permeation of the moisture into the soil may have accumulated differently in 20 years.
That's a good catch, because I think isn't there a town regulation that says whether a new soil scientist has to come out and do the work relevant to a period of time? So
No.
if it's within 10 years,
No.
you can use, no?
No, if staff goes out and takes a look at it and it looks reasonably that it has not changed. So say, for instance, you went out there and you saw that, we look at aerial photographs and everything, and if you look at it on the right side, if it were flattened, no trees in there, and substantial grade change, you have a pretty good idea that the soil scientist report is not accurate anymore. You look back over whatever we have our reach of aerials, it was long in the mid-region over here, and then, again, relatively urban development along the left-hand side as well, because as you can see, the channel has been, over years, has been, it's a very steep, it's not a very natural-looking channel to begin with. So it's a judgment call. Can you use what's existing? You go out there and the first thing you look and take a look at the wetlands and say, you know what, it looks relatively the same. So I think we can use that. If
So
there
you
were
feel
changes,
comfortable with that?
yes, if there were changes
Yep.
and, pretty obvious changes, then you can request, you know what, you need to have the soil scientists go back and reflag the wetlands.
Right, thank you.
Just piggybacking off of the soils report, on page 2 of your report, you say, groundwater pollution is a hazard in areas used for on-site sewage disposal. Are you just talking about all the
In
stuff-
general,
Yeah, okay. All the stuff that's in there.
so if you go to, you look at what the soil types were, like this is the Raypole silt loam that's in there. Go to the general soils manual. You can pull out what the constraints are generally with it. And so I think that's what was been expressed there.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else. I'm glad that the invasives are being removed, because there's a lot of them.
Yep. Anybody else have anything? Okay. Rick, you wanna write that one up? Good.
Sure.
The page 2 of our agenda. EPC 18-2022, 358.
Thank you.
Olive Tree Ridge Road, S. Miller and K. Miller, to construct an in-ground pool house, terrace, fence, equipment pad, and other related features proximate to wetlands and water courses. The property lies along the east side of Olive Tree Ridge Road, and the access of which lies approximately 460 feet north of Nutmeg Lane, and is identified as map number 9, lot number 121B. Zone is R2, and this is approximately 2.1464 acres. Rick?
So as summarized in the general summary report, the matter was initially reviewed at a prior meeting, and comments from EPC staff and you commission members were incorporated into a letter that had the applicant request to address as part of the application process. So the applicant is proposing to do an in-ground pool, a pool house, terrace, fence, equipment pad, and other features on the parcel. It'd be to the rear of the existing dwelling. Wetlands range from kind of a scrub growth to a more intently forested lands as you wend your way around the rear of the property. Evidence of tree cutting along the rear that was pointed out by commission members, and with the ask of amending any mitigation plan as a treatment for those areas as well. But like most applications of these sort, the applicant is charged with demonstrating has minimized or avoided impacts on wetlands and watercourses, utilize measures to preserve water quality, address the concept of drainage impact, and provided as appropriate measures to mitigate unavoidable impacts or improve the overall conservation values of the property in the regulated areas. Just for the purpose of the record, the encroachments temporarily or permanently affect about 2,400 square feet of the upland review area. There are no direct wetland encroachments proposed. Grade change is again low to moderate. The grade change not expected to be 1 to 3 feet. No additionally sized trees are going to be lost as a result of the project. Drainage analysis. Again, the increase in the pool, imperviousness due to the pool, the patio, the pool house roof, if left unmitigated, would result in an increase in peak flows. Those peaks have been reduced with the introduction of a structured drainage system consisting of a bank of infiltrators and portions of the existing roof of the dwelling. And I think I did not report it, but portions of the pool house are gonna be taken into the infiltration bank. And again, for the 2 to 50-year storms, there will be no increase in peak rates of runoff for the, again, 2 to 50-year storms. And that has been certified by the project engineer. To assist in the preservation of water quality, there's a basic erosion control plan consisting of perimeter silt fences, anti-tracking pads, storage and stockpile areas. Again, infiltration to seize upon the soil's ability to cool and treat runoff. And any collection structures have, like the junction boxes have deep sumps and outlet controls to collect that as well. To mitigate the impact, and again, I want to maybe start off by saying that they embraced an alternative, because one of the concerns that had been raised was about the location of the fence, which was encumbering the entire perimeter of the property through the wetlands, segmenting the wetlands. And the applicant has chosen not to provide, again, with the change in code, and not to provide a full fence, to put the money into a code compliant. I take that back. No, they've modified the fence to draw it closer to the pool in this particular instance. Had my pools mixed up. They're drawing it back towards the existing pool to actually take it out of the wetlands. And as part of the mitigation plan, they have come up with a planting plan that includes tree shrubs and ground covers. They're doing the invasive plant removal, tree protection for larger trees that are in the general vicinity of the development envelope, and they're going to do a demarcation feature. One of the things that probably has to be resolved, or given a little more time and attention to, is, I think you saw on the planting plan, they have the planting and demarcation feature like on the inside of the fence. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. It may be more appropriate to draw the fence to the inward side of the planting, and to use the fence as the demarcation in this area, but they are doing embedded boulders in the remaining portions of the site. So maybe give that a little bit more time and attention this evening. But they did embrace an alternative where they took that fence from the entire perimeter with the potential to segment the regulated areas, and have shrunk it significantly, and will take it to the outside of the wetlands and to utilize it in part as a demarcation feature. Mr. Doherty's here again for this one too.
Okay. Yes, sir. Please, introduce yourself.
Matthew Doherty, architect for the Millers, and represent them for this application.
Is there anything you would like to add to?
Well, I think Rick has covered the majority of the items. We have gone back and forth with some different concepts about plantings and fence locations, and trying to, get this into a condition that is acceptable for everyone. And I mean, some of the additional plantings were at the request of the homeowner. They realized that, there's probably some areas that are lawn now that have no significant value to them, and that if it helps their application, that there's a section up here that's lawn. They pay people to mow it. They wanted to, make it more natural, so to speak.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Sure. Commission members? Lauren, anything?
No, I don't have any questions.
Is the septic system being moved?
No, the septic system is in the front yard, well, what I call the front yard.
I'm
even though
just
it
asking
faces-
because it's not represented on the, on the plan, but then on the drainage plan, it shows existing septic system and proposed septic system.
Mhm.
So I'm
Right,
just
so as part of our development, we needed to provide essentially what's a replacement system if in fact the one in the front fails.
Oh, okay.
So that's why there's
That's
a
what that
septic
is.
plan as part of that.
Okay, I was just
Ju-
confused. by
Yeah,
that.
it's a just in case.
Okay.
Anything else?
Oh, no, I don't have anything else. That was my only question.
Good?
No questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay. Want to write up the approval for this then?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Mr.
Thank you.
Moving on, it's EPC 19-2022, 34 LaForge Road, 34 LaForge Road LLC. Construction of a new family dwelling, drive, drainage and deck and other related features proximate to an intermittent water course. The property lies along the south side of LaForge Road, just west of Relihan Road, and it's identified as map number 44, lot number 19, zone is 1/5. And it is approximately 0.3746 acres.
Mr. Chairman, if you recall, this application was subject to a public hearing.
Yep.
So the public hearing, all the necessary notice had been posted. The public hearing was opened on September 7th, I believe, and closed the same evening after an extensive presentation by staff and even more extensive presentation by the applicant. A neighbor had appeared, had questions concerning drainage impact on our property, and the applicant sought to, address their concerns. Other concerns outlined by the commission, including, and the big one being drainage impact, the value of the mitigation. There was issues concerning, or requests for information concerning the home, how it's, the basement, how it sits in groundwater, not sit in groundwater, what they were gonna do for dewatering purposes were all satisfactorily addressed. And staff was directed to prepare a resolution in advance of the next meeting. Again, it was closed in a single evening. And please recall that for a application that is subject to public hearing, the board will state on the record the reasons why they choose to approve or deny the application, but most importantly, that alternatives have been examined, that there are no prudent and feasible alternatives having less of an impact on the regulated areas. That needs to be stated on the record. And just very quickly, in terms of alternatives, they did quite a bit in terms of evaluating the tree resources, taking out trees that they originally showed as being kept because they were in poor condition, keeping trees that were, and providing preservation elements to them, enhancements as outlined by an arborist. They, in fact, what they did is move even sections of the proposed drainage mitigation systems to give some of the trees of size and value, less encroachment along the root masses of those trees as well. And again, the mitigation proposal and really revolved around the water course and planting, debris removal, fence removals, and coming up with a scheme that's going to promote the free flow of water on the property and in the area.
Sorry, Peter?
No, I would just say this is a property, in my observation, that's been in neglect for some time, including the drainage areas and the regulated areas. And I thought the applicant addressed the single neighboring homeowner extremely well. And on the totality of the circumstances, I think this is going to be certainly an enhancement to the the water course, that the intermittent water course that's in the back of the home. So I think I look very favorably on this application. I think it'll be an enhancement in all those reasons, and also frankly, an enhancement to the neighborhood and the block.
Yep, I agree. I would agree. Anybody else have any questions or comments? So,
Prudent and feasible, any alternatives that, there's no prudent and feasible alternatives?
No, I think that the area is very tight, so, given the topography of the area, I didn't see any feasible alternatives to what we see in the application here.
Peter, can I have a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve 19-2022 at 34 LaForge Road.
Can I have a second?
I'm pleased to second the motion.
All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay. Moving on, EPC 2022-21 Brookside Road. M. Marini and S. Kennedy to install a recreational patio walkway and landscaping in a conservation easement and special flood hazard area, and in close proximity to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the west side of Brookside Road, just north of the Post Road, and is identified as map number 16, lot number 66. Zone is an R1/3, and it is approximately 0.4634 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the commission had received testimony and detailed information on at least 2 occasions over the past couple months. I believe it was in August and September. And again, noting the challenges of this particular lot and the history, great detail went into the history and the challenges of the lot. The applicant had, in response to your questions and concerns, retooled the application to minimize the amount of, there's no direct water course or wetland encroachments. They took sought an alternative to take it out of the conservation easement, no grade change, and provided a full battery of mitigative measures ranging from landscape enhancements and plantings to cleaning debris, and working with the abutters to come up with a scheme to ensure that the west side, the far side of the river had been or shall be appropriately maintained. And as a result of that testimony and the information that you gathered, I was directed to prepare a resolution. And that's what you have before you this evening for a vote. And again, the application was for a grade level patio. And
So, Jim, I think you had some admin changes?
I said some edits, suggested edits to Rick.
Okay, so those will be incorporated?
Yes.
And anybody else have any questions or comments?
no,
No?
All good.
No? Okay. Peter, may I have a motion to,
Yeah, motion to approve 20-2022 at 21 Brookside Road.
Jim, a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Okay, now, EPC 2022, 29 Brush Island Road. DCC Revocable Family Trust to construct an elevated terrace, pool house, residential additions, in-ground propane tank, and other related features within a special flood hazard areas and 100 feet of poly pond. The property lies along the north side of the terminus of Brush Island Road, approximately 1,525 feet west of Nearwater Lane, and is identified as map number 56, lot number 15, zone is R1, and this is approximately 0.850 acres. Rick?
I saw Mr. Flaherty, Mr. Gleason, and Mr. Pagliaro here to represent the application, but in summary, the applicant is proposing to construct on this property that abuts a portion of Holly Pond, an elevated terrace, a pool and pool house on the elevated terrace, certain residential additions, an in-ground propane tank, and other related features. Comes before the EPC, given its the setback to Holly Pond that portions of this project will encroach into. What's important to note, aside from these additions that are placed on the property, the work includes activities necessary to restore the dwelling to flood compliance. You'll note in the agenda summary, this has been before the various town commissions over the years, one with the initial construction, it could have been, I think it was in 2000, of a flood-proof dwelling to meet V-zone standards, which means elevated on piers. There'd been a subsequent application that provided breakaway walls. There was and although been completed, when we went out and looked at it, there was also something that happened in there. There was a change in the flood zone that occurred over time that went from V-zone, where the dwelling was, to A-zone, and that was a FEMA-adapted change in the flood. Again, the application, the vast majority of the application activities involve the work to the rear plane of the dwelling, where they're doing essentially an elevated pool, taking the existing pool that's there, demolishing that, creating almost like a monolith, and creating an elevated terrace more in line with what the first floor is, elevating the pool, creating the pool house. And then also there'll be drainage to attenuate not only essentially and not so much the impacts of the water quality, the drainage impacts, but vast majority of this for water quality purposes, given where its location is. So the applicant has provided a drainage mitigation scheme that we could get into a bit. The resources on the property, there are no inland wetlands on the parcel. The regulatory component before the commission was the 100-foot setback from Holly Pond. However, there are, and it is subject to a future coastal site plan review, et cetera, before planning and zoning, that there's coastal flood hazard area, modified escarpment, tidal wetlands, and estuarine embayments on and or proximate to the site. And, the requirements of CAM relative to those resources would be evaluated at planning and zoning. Vast majority of the sites in the flood zone, albeit the more turbulent waters along Holly Pond in the V zone, the more ponded waters, the remaining areas and down the street for some distance associated with the A zone. So it's a coastal flood hazard area nearly in its entirety. The issues that have been identified by the staff and the commission, to demonstrate that they're minimizing or avoiding, impacts in regulated areas or other areas of resource, utilize measures to preserve water quality or enhance water quality, address potential drainage and flood hazard impacts, and confirm compliance with the structural requirements of the flood regulations, and appropriately mitigates for unavoidable impacts or enhances the qualities of the site. To that end, plans have been generated both as a civil component and structural component and a landscape component. The site development plan shows, again, no direct encroachments into tidal wetlands to affecting the modified escarpment or the embayment. Approximately 10,000 square feet temporarily or permanently of the flood zone and upland review area will be temporarily or permanently affected. Grade change, very low, 1 to 2 feet. Setbacks to the seawall, tidal wetlands, and the other coastal resources are no less than 25 feet, and that's not only with structures, but also the mitigation components. No large individuals or groups of trees will be lost as well. And again, most of the space that's affected by the development is currently held as lawn. Project engineer looked at drainage impact. Again, looked at the watersheds, came up with a scheme to address concerns in part with the drainage, but also the water quality. It's a structured system. DPW has reviewed it. There was test holes done. DPW has reviewed it, has endorsed the project as proposed. There was a drainage maintenance plan that had been, as typically proposed, has been supplied and requires some minor modifications. Water quality, basic erosion control plan, collection structures fit with deep sumps and outlet controls, infiltration to seize upon soil's ability to cool and treat runoff. And the propane fuel would be used to, in a new tank. A plan of mitigation proposed provides for removal of invasives, fenced protection for select trees in the proximate to the development envelope, and installation of plantings basically along the seawall and in the, down towards the waterfront, includes numerous trees, shrubs and ground covers. And many of them are not only tolerate of coastal conditions, but also will be, an enhancement from a displacing manicured lawn and the characteristics that it provides. The big component is that, and they are working diligently to address, is you have to make the house now A-zone compliant. There had been activities that occurred in the house over the many years since it was first built that kind of, the zone has changed. The house had been managed and manipulated in some way, shape, or forms. It didn't even comply with the V-zone. It would lessen the V-zone compliance by constructing these additions. So they're working, and they're probably at 60 to 70% plans of doing rather substantial changes to the development to make it A-zone compliant. And it will include, and the plans that you have address that 60 to 70%, they include the infills between the piers that support it are now going to be concrete block. They're going to have properly sized flood openings. They're getting rid of finished materials. They're relocating utilities that were installed down below without the permission of, not without the permission, but in contrary to the regulations for V-zone construction, replacing, sheetrock and other finishes down there with flood tolerant, flood resistant structures and features. So that's a work in progress that will be done as we move through this process into the planning and zoning process in advance of a building permit. So those are my comments, and the team is here if they do have any questions for them, and I'm available to answer any questions as well.
Walter?
I would normally have, Wilder Gleason for the record, sorry, Gleason Associates. I would not normally have both the engineer and architect here, but I don't want to get delayed again. So if you have any questions, we are here to address them. I think Rick couldn't, says basically we're in compliance. We are. We've given you a landscape plan. We've addressed the concerns. And we're hoping for a speedy approval so we can go on to P&Z.
One quick one. The pool's gonna have, according to October 1st, was it October 1st? You can put the new cover on it that sort of rolls over. Are you gonna do that?
I'm glad our architect is here.
I expected Craig to answer it.
I'm glad you got my check to justify my company. Christopher Pagliaro Architects in Darien. We have a compliant pool regardless of the cover. So we're planning on using the cover.
Okay,
but
just
the pool is elevated, so the wall that is the water side of the pool is non-climbable and over 4 feet anyway. So either way they go, we're being elevated, which we had done once before with this commission in Contempt Island years ago. So.
Okay, thank you for the answer.
I think just my understanding of that is that the state code is accepting the cover, but I think each town has to adopt that regulation from what I've been told.
Okay.
So,
Well, I've been told it's good because.
I think Mike is saying that too, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
No, reviewed the plans, house looks great, plans look great, no questions.
Pretty amazing.
Just curious, waterproofing the fuel tank. how logistically.
And now we
does
just
that happen?
justified Craig's.
Yeah, the propane tank?
The propane tank, yeah.
You got everybody, okay. Craig Flaherty, professional engineer with Redness and Mead. We put propane tanks in flood zones quite frequently, and basically, when you dig the hole, you pour a concrete slab, and then you anchor the tank to that concrete slab. So if the propane tank was empty and the flood came, it would stay unbuoyant because of the concrete and the strapping.
So you don't have to elevate it, as long as it's anchored in place and doesn't overtop, you're okay.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
The only other thing is that if there's a regulator, the regulator should be elevated, the intake to the regulator should be elevated a foot above as well, so that there's no input of water to it as well.
And the old tank, presumably the fuel oil, that's obviously been removed, or inert material, or, I assume the propane is new and that there was.
I think it's
oil.
replacing another propane tank.
Yeah.
isn't it?
I believe there's a smaller tank.
Okay.
I don't know if there, I think that there's a smaller tank or two, and it's being replaced with a larger tank that's
So it's
buried.
propane to propane.
Propane to propane, I
Thank you.
believe.
Jim?
I plan to drive out often just to watch this.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty
Pretty
cool.
amazing plan, yeah, I agree. Carolyn?
Great plan,
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to live in this house.
I
want to start.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, we could all live in.
All right. Thank you very much. Rick, you want to write up and draft approval for us? Thank you, gentlemen, for spending time. I hope it's connected to the sewer. It's actually septic.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, Craig. Yeah, I know the sewer commission's got to do its job. For those of you who don't know, Craig is in charge of the sewer commission.
Yep, Chairman.
So, anyway, moving on, EPC 2022, 11 Sunswick Road, S. BIA and RBIA to construct residential additions, including garage bays and breezeways, expand a driveway, install drainage, and implement other related improvements proximate to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the south side of Sunswick Road, approximately 500 feet east of Goodwise River Road, and is identified as map 62, lot 34, zone is R1, and it is approximately 2.078 acres.
Mr. Chairman, the application was accepted just last month,
Yep.
and the responses to our questions and concerns and the commission members' questions and concerns have been addressed, which prompted the writing of the agenda summary report and placement of the matter on the agenda for discussion. Looking back at the history, the development of this parcel was the subject of a prior EPC permit application. We have a lot of those that come back after some number of years. For the single-family dwelling, the pool, and with that was the driveway and drainage systems. It was completed, and now, several years later, we have the applicant returning to provide a garage expansion breezeway and some minimal driveway expansion to enter the garage space. Also, there will be certain drainage improvements that are proposed, and just in terms of what's there from the regulatory element, there's an existing, what they call a dry pond, just a low-lying area, densely vegetated, not much grows in it. There's some area around it that has been identified as wetlands, and the vegetation types range from woodland to some altered space that had been planted as part of the prior application process. The applicant is tasked with are tasked with demonstrating that the proposed improvements minimize the impact or avoid impacts on wetlands and watercourses. They needed to address the concepts pertaining to drainage, to water quality, and again, given the opportunity to either mitigate for unavoidable impacts or enhance the overall conservation values of the regulated areas and property. Again, just for the purposes of the record, about 2,300 square feet of the upland review area, it will be affected either temporarily or permanently. The space is generally comprised of lawn and a few ornamental trees. Grade changes, there are no direct wetland or watercourse or pond encroachments. Overall grade change is low, with the cuts and fills not expected to exceed 2 feet. There's some low profile short lengths of retaining wall that need to be installed to transition the grade. The applicants provided a boulder wall detail. The structures and features lie no less than 25 feet to the wetlands and watercourses. The grading and or drainage improvements lie substantially greater encroachment with them with what's called a water quality berm, and we'll get to that in a second. And again, the tree loss is limited, again, being primarily lawn to several ornamentals that lie along the existing building or in the lawny or the grassy areas where the garage and driveway expansion are expected to take place. Drainage impact. The applicant has done an analysis and is essentially utilizing the existing pond in the wetlands to detain the stormwater from the increased improvement, but also utilizing portions of the existing drainage system that is already there, the infiltration system, to attenuate impacts. And as a result, looking at what's the impact on the pond, although it may comprise a de minimis increase in the pond, any increase of 2 to 50 years would be held in the pond itself on the property. And in the low point, which is way down where the driveways diverge, nothing will leave the property as well. So the engineer has certified that there'll be no adverse impacts on drainage and adjoining properties as a result. And again, portions of it is taken to the existing drainage system to infiltrate into the ground. In terms of water quality, in working with the DPW, they added this, what they're calling a water quality berm, just along the the rear face of the new addition, and my understanding it being sized and shaped in a manner to hold the water quality volume back. In terms of, and to mitigate the water quality volume. In terms of the mitigation, so again, recognizing that there was a lot of existing landscaping plants, some of the biggest, like red twig dogwoods and Winterberry I've seen are it was pretty successful. A straight up planting plan is not always the thing to do. So the landscape designer went back and not only had come up with a planting plan to supplement what was there, but how to better manage what's there. So they're going to be trimming back some of the trees, cutting out some of the weed growth around the trees themselves, and doing some invasive management as well. And that's outlined. There's a very small little planting plan that has been supplied in your package. The one thing that you probably should address as part of this is, since the house has been built, there is a tree house that's been put in regulated areas, and there's a fence that kind of segments the regulated areas. So I think the commission should decide if it's something that should remain in place or should be relocated. And we can participate in the conversation, but Harry's here tonight to talk about anything else any questions you may have.
Yeah, does the treehouse meet planning and zoning regulations? Harry, why don't you come up to the podium and identify yourself, so.
Evening, Harry Roadshaw with McCord Engineering, professional engineer, representing the Bayes. Yes, the treehouse does meet planning and zoning standards. It's located about right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's all completely elevated, so no disturbance to the ground.
Yeah.
And then, as Rick said, there's also an existing wood stockade fence that has been put in. I understand that the homeowners get a lot of ducks in the pond, and they have some large dogs, so they essentially fenced it off to prohibit their dogs from, going in there and getting them. I think as Rick said, it's very vegetated, so they were unaware, exactly where the fence was going. I believe our new planting plan and mitigation plan will also mitigate the disturbance from that fence, as well as what we're proposing now.
Okay, commissioners, questions and comments? Do we have to take a vote on the treehouse? You're okay with the treehouse?
I don't think the treehouse is before.
Anybody else feel strongly about the treehouse, keeping it, eliminating it, or eliminating it, I guess,
I
because it's
want
there?
to live in it.
Oh.
It is a pretty nice
Oh, wait,
treehouse.
you can't live in two houses. I thought you were gonna do 29 Brush Island.
So that,
Yeah.
should that start to be
A
conditions
winter
for
and one in
approval?
Right.
Commissioner guest house?
So, as far as I'm concerned, the tree doesn't affect the wetlands.
No.
So, and when it starts to fall down, they'll take it down because it'll become a hazard for them to climb it. That's my personal opinion, but I wanted to, to hear the consensus of the commission. So anyway, Rick, that's what how about the fence? I don't really.
My only issue with the fence, I understand the rationale for installing it the way it is, but haven't we previously sort of encouraged people to have fences where there's a little bit of an opening at the bottom so
Mhm.
that like wild,
Critters, was it?
critters can go
Ducks and
through?
dogs.
Bill Wright's
Yeah.
critters can crawl in there.
Yeah, monkeys and squirrels and things like that. I mean, because it is like a stockade fence, but it does have a wire mesh on the other side of it, and it does go all the way to the ground, so, I don't know.
Well, I have a thought, and yes, so regarding fences, do we want to mitigate wildlife access to watercourses? What about just an electric dog fence? If the rationalization is we don't want the dogs to chase the ducks in the water, but we want to have wildlife access the pond,
Right.
a electric dog fence would work just great. And with a property that's this size, I would think that would be a given already. What do you think, Harry?
I'm not sure the client's preference on that. I agree it'd probably be
That's a pretty extreme solution to a problem, is to the expense for, if that's the reason to put the fence, I would think the better technology option would be the electric dog fence, and certainly more economical.
Is that whole property fenced in now, though?
yes.
Yeah, if a lot of people don't like dog collars on the.
Okay,
dog
well,
collars.
anyways, I'm just saying, you fence in the whole pond and mitigate wildlife access
No, I
to
know
the
what you're
pond?
saying.
Or,
I know what you're saying.
or build a fence to partition the dogs from the pond?
I don't know what the answer is. Some
If-
people
if-
don't like it.
Sorry, if the fence is in a regulated area, should it have come before the commission to begin with, or has it was put up without, obviously, permission, right?
Yep.
So what happens when you uncover something like that?
Well, I think we have to remedy it in some way, no? Unless it's grandfathered.
Well, I think it's a fairly new structure for you, certainly after the construction of the house. I didn't see
Yeah.
anything on any priors.
No, but I guess what I'm asking is, if the fence is in a regulated area, should it not have come before the commission in the first instance?
Yes.
And then the second question is, maybe instead of making a comment on what should happen, what should happen in that case?
I think you have an option. I mean, it's brought to your attention. You can include it in this, essentially, it's your consideration of this this permit application, then you can say, leave it, modify it, or remove it.
Right.
Or, you know, or relocate it.
Right.
And so if your concern is about access, you can you can, and I understand that it was beyond, I think they have chickens somewhere on the property too.
Yeah.
And they're concerned about like raccoons coming up and, you know, dragging the chicken through the
Yeah.
fences and so it is wire mesh in a lot of the areas.
Yep.
I think substantially it's wire mesh.
Mhm.
You know, is it gonna impact drainage? Probably not unless
Right.
it gets clogged. Is it gonna impede the movement of the little ones can fit through
Yeah.
the mesh. Can they take 3 inches off the bottom? Yes.
Yeah, but then you let raccoons in,
Then you let raccoons in.
and
Can you-
groundhogs and everything else that can, you know.
Can you relocate it to something that parallels the wetland? I guess you could. So I would say treehouse, I'm not terribly bothered by it. You know, I'm not a big proponent of fences. Maybe if you relocate it to the edge and use it as your, kind of like your demarcation feature, there's a good, you know, shrub edge there that's there now, but maybe it can be wound in between that. So, I mean, I think it's should have been permitted? Yes.
Yeah, so maybe I asked a question to Mr. DeVestre. What are your,
Harry.
Harry, sorry.
It's okay.
I didn't know your first name.
That's
so I
usually
apologize.
Harry Rook.
Harry, what, do you have any thoughts on that? 'Cause I guess philosophically, I feel uncomfortable approving something when there's a violation existing without remedying the violation.
No, understood. I hear what you're saying. I think by providing plantings that are downgrading of that existing fence, it's mitigating any impact that that fence would have caused. It is just a wood stockade fence. I think any disturbance or impact to the wetlands would have been extremely minimal just to install those fence posts. Yeah, that's sort of my feeling. I don't think it's has a large impact to the wetlands with the fence type that it is. And any plantings and stormwater management that we're doing now to clean that runoff and filtering that runoff down through the wetlands is enhancing the wetlands much more than the disturbance that fence caused.
So there was no water there last time I looked.
There's a little bit today.
Yeah,
A little bit.
I didn't get to this week. So it has, I must have missed that fence, I can't believe it. So there was a fence around a dry pond last time.
Mm-hmm.
That must have looked good.
Well, to address your question is, should the applicant come with an application for approval of the as-built?
But that's kind of how I feel, that the application should be compliant.
So should we modify this application?
I would think that it's either, I mean, it could be a simple act as by condition, say relocate it to an alternative area that doesn't segment the wetland. Or, if you so choose, modify the fence to provide for the passage of wildlife. I think it included here, we're in situ.
Understood. That said, having raised chickens, okay, myself personally, okay, you know, I'm a little sympathetic to keeping, and having lost one or two raccoons, you know, I see it and say, hey, no, it is called chicken wire for a reason. And so,
Wait, we're not talking about the chain link fence, though, aren't we just talking about the stockade fence?
yeah, the stockade.
Yeah.
Just the fence that goes through, this goes through this
Yeah,
area here.
that's the one, that's the one.
Right here.
But I
It's that
mean,
one section of fence, isn't that right?
but I mean, if the issue is with, you know, the chickens, I mean, you know, raccoons and things can get around it up here. I mean, the fence doesn't entirely keep them out.
No, it
You
doesn't.
know, they can easily get around there if they really wanted
So
to.
do the dogs, so.
So could the dogs.
If they can, they're pretty weak, right?
Right.
No, what I'm saying, I'm not trying, what I'm suggesting is not a punitive measure.
Right.
I'm saying this is just a very static solution is, and I mean this in the gentlest way, is somehow someone managed to disregard, based on all of this work, disregard the fact that an application needed to be presented. So, and again, I'm just being factual here. The applicant should take this application and take it home and come back with an amendment to the application for the fence to be approved.
And consider the prudent and reasonable alternative of a dog, what do they call it, electronic fence?
Yeah, well, chickens, dogs, whatever, I'm an animal lover, I'm all, I get the benefits of people with chickens and chicken coop, so I don't have a problem with that. I'm just saying, I don't think it's our job to come up with solutions for the applicant when the applicant didn't provide an application in the first place. That's all I have to say on that.
Okay. So, Rick, I sort of get the sense of the commission that we're unfortunately unsettled about this application because it does have a violation, and there is a violation there, and one could consider reasonable, prudent alternatives to this. I'm not sure where we want to go with this. Should we send Harry back to the applicant to say, hey, okay, one is, there's an unapproved fence in there, okay, that either has to get approved, so we have to modify the application. And then the question is, do you want to put would you consider putting a dog fence around this place? A dog fence. And electronic, what did you call it?
Well, it's just I haven't been to let me clarify, I haven't been to the site, so I don't 100% understand this fencing piece, that I haven't visualized it, so I don't know. I'm just stuck on the same issue that you are, is everything is germane aside from separate of the fact that an application hasn't been submitted. So I don't even think I should be talking about prudent and feasible alternatives.
No, I actually agree 100%. I wouldn't even say it has to be an electronic dog fence or something else. I think it needs to address the situation and the alternatives, and then present the application back to us for approval, because I don't think we should be providing the choices or craft what the application is. I think that's your job, Harry, to present it to us for approval.
Or why don't you, one of the alternatives would be, when it comes to, without holding up the project, would be to add a condition that simply says, reload the fence, the offensive portion of the fence from regulated areas.
Right.
And then they can decide how they want to do it.
And I don't even have difficulty approving a fence in a regulated area if it's the proper fence, and I think I even feel comfortable with that. I just think that the condition should be acknowledged and considered, and then presented to us in a way that allows us to feel comfortable, given that there is basically a fence there that hasn't been approved.
So Rick, your suggestion is to make it as a condition, relocate the fence.
I think that's
okay.
Everybody seems to be uncomfortable with the fact that it's segments. If it was running parallel to the wetlands, it'd be a different story. A better way, unless, you feel strongly in the other direction that they should come back, is just do it as a condition, say, like we do with a lot of things. Remove debris from the channel. We don't typically ask them, the ultra specifics of it. Yeah. So it says, remove those portions of the fence that were installed within regulated areas without permit.
Mm-hmm. There we go. You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Gains approval, and it achieves what we need to have achieved.
All right.
And if they're really strongly about that, they'll have to come back.
They'll come back with a fence application.
Okay.
All right.
No, I think my clients would have no problem relocating that portion of the fence. It's a condition of approval. They're gonna have to install those plantings anyway, so they can do it at the same time.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Harry.
Thank you.
Harry, I think you can write that up then?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, approval of the minutes. Everybody should have a copy of the regular minutes of September 7, 2022. I think the
a real package this time. So everybody have a chance to read it and go through
Guys
it.
killed me this month.
Yes, sir.
I wrote like 300,000
And,
words.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of September 7th, 2022.
Thank you, Peter.
I'm
Second.
prepared to second that motion.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Thank you. Moving on to agent approvals, EPC 23-2022, 100 Old Kings Highway North. Y, trying to maintain a vinyl fence constructed within close proximity to wetlands and watercourses. The property lies along the west side of Old Kings Highway North, approximately 1,200 feet north of Brookside Road, and is identified as map number 35, lot number 16. Zone is DB, and it is approximately 0.1788 acres.
I placed on the agenda for consideration of the agent approval, just to, how I intended to move forward with this. And
We discussed this last time.
we discussed it extensively at the last month's meeting. A fence was put up, no permit was obtained beforehand. It runs parallel to essentially a drainage ditch that the soil science came out and said basically within inside the ditches, but the regulated area was. All lawn and urban space that adjoined it. No adverse impact on drainage and adjoining properties. They are actually keeping the fence up, and most of it is already up 3 or 4 inches to allow for the movement of stormwater and, small critters. The applicant has agreed to do things to, if allowed to maintain the fence in place, relatively speaking, is maintain the channel, effectively maintain the channel, and make sure that there's sufficient area underneath the fence to move back and forth, but they've also have come up with a very small planting mitigation plan, and we can work on it with them.
Mhm.
They got the shrubs right, the ground covers not so much, but we can work with them on that to change that. They do have to make some pretty substantial modifications to the fence to comply with zoning. They have to take it down from 6 feet to 4 feet along that edge, so they have to, modify the panels. They have to relocate the last panel to get it fully on their property. So they have quite a bit of work to make it possible, but they're willing to do it. And they've said, hey, they purchased a home and they have small kids.
Yeah.
And it's on a very, very busy street.
Yes.
And they come flying around the corner, so the combination of moving the fence back and lowering the height's gonna be a positive there.
Yep.
So with that, staff intends, unless you tell me otherwise.
Any questions or comments for Rick?
No, I mean, I was wondering if planning and zoning could give an exemption on that, as long as the sight line was clear.
I've been told it has to be 4 feet high.
Okay.
So because that's what they have it's a funny thing because they have these front yards. They have like one sweeping front yard, and the fence can be no higher than 6 feet. 4 feet.
Okay, so there's no questions or comments? I don't know if there's any other business. And Peter, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the regular meeting of the Environmental Protection Commission, October 12th, 2022.
I second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? Good night, Channel 79.